Okay.
It's fuzzy.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're happy to see you. I know that's fascinating, but we are real live people here.
Don't watch the screen.
We're so used to watching screens. We also have a monitor here, which I find myself looking at. We're Red Cedar Chamber Music. We're a nonprofit arts organization based in Marion, Iowa. We've been in existence for about 25 years. And my name is Miera Kim. I'm the executive director, and I also play the violin.
And I'm Carrie Bosch, and I'm the artistic director, and I'm a cellist.
And I'm Akwi Nji. I am a multidisciplinary artist and writer.
Carrie and I are core ensemble members, but we work with various guest artists, and for this particular occasion, we're thrilled to be working with Akwi. We're finding the 90 minutes are going rather quickly today, so let's see. Basically, we're going to play you 3 works that combine words and music in different ways. And what we'll start with is a very simple treatment where we're going to use a poem that was not written by Akwi, but by another Cedarapidian, Julie Hanson, called Long Dance, Slow Dance, Long Revolution.
Long Dance, Slow Revolution.
Long Dance, Slow Revolution. And it's being presented in an elocution style. So Akwi will read the poem, and we have chosen music to enhance the emotional impact and mood of it.
Opposites perhaps in many ways, have lived together for a long time. She, bringing masterful dinners to the table with seasonings he would never have guessed could belong so well in such sauces. And he, bringing a close to the day with talk that enriches and plays with all that is common between them. And this continues through the years of having all their children. And then one day, he cooks something superb. Although it isn't one of her recipes, she feels 2 things. She feels moved aside 1/2 inch, and she feels delight, as any master does in what has been learned, and delight as any lover does in the bright change in the beloved. Things go on as before, until he does it again, and more. A few years pass, and to everyone's surprise, at the wedding of her niece, she stands and is eloquent. Her words come from a place standing far back, standing very still, and what they understand from there is considerable. Surely, at some performance, you have seen two people dance like this in syncopation. It is a long dance, and midway through, out there in the audience, you begin to notice subtle changes, a borrowing between the parts, and in the choreography, an increased reciprocity, until gradually, it has become apparent a reversal has taken place. Say why. Something you are surprised to find you have wanted all along has been, in gesture, named. You are weeping and cannot say why.
So, when we first started this project, we were looking at the history of putting together words and music other than opera, but like in the more non-traditional ways. And one of the things that we learned was that between 1870 and 1920, for women of a certain social status, theater was totally inappropriate. It was distasteful. It was not, it wasn't good. So one of the things that women who wanted to perform poetry or words did was they created this elocution, which was basically the performance of poetry or verse of some kind, and accompanied by music. So we tried to mirror that with the creation of this. The next presentation of words and music is a little simpler. It is just simply responsive. So in other words, we took a piece of music written by living composer David Ott, which was written for a violin and cello duo. Actually, we're a married couple. The duo that it was written for was Sharon Robinson, cellist, and Jaime Laredo, violinist. And he wrote them a piece that had relationship themes. It was called Conversations, and it had 6 movements, and the movements are, evocative, have evocative titles. Serious thoughts, a difficult issue, picky, 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 2 views on the same subject, chat at the fireplace, and differing opinions. And we asked Akwi to compose responsive verses to each of these movements. And we're going to share a couple of them with you, but Akwi will tell you a little more because
Sure, the first one, we'll share two with you, and what you'll hear in the first one is an allusion to Icarus. Anybody familiar with Icarus? Couple people, few people, awesome. So those of you who are familiar with Icarus, you know that the story goes that Icarus and his father were imprisoned, and the myth indicates that in order to escape the prison, his father constructed 2 pairs of wings for Icarus and him, and the wings were made out of wax and feathers. And the only rule was that the father was explaining to the son, we can't fly too close to the sun, otherwise the wax, of course, will melt and will fall to our death. We can't fly too close to the water because the feathers will absorb the moisture, and the weight of that moisture will bring us down into a death as well. And Icarus disobeyed his father. So even though collectively, as Carey said, conversations is really primarily about relationships between 2 people within a couple, I also chose to expand upon it and think about, in this context, a relationship between father and son.
All right, a difficult issue.
Though there were at first wings, see now the falling, because joy looks nothing like the sun. Joy feels nothing like flying into light. One might have warned him. See now the falling. Listen, a splash quite unnoticed. One might have warned him. Love, too, can fall rather silently. Listen, a splash quite unnoticed, because joy looks nothing like the sun. Joy feels nothing like flying into light. Love, too, can fall rather silently, though there were at first wings.
Picky, picky, picky.
Well, let me just put my one quickly. This is a little bit of play on words. Obviously, picky, 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 like nitpicking on another person. But also, there's a technique for playing stringed instruments called pizzicato, which means you're plucking the string, so it's like picking the string. And you'll hear that this piece is mostly plucked.
originally 2018, when we did the residency at Washington High School. Prior to arriving at the school, we'd invited students to do essentially what Miera and Carey asked me to do, which is listen to the music and then write their own response to some of the selections. So the piece that I will read in response to Picky Picky was actually written by Vivian Lin, who was a 9th grader at Washington High School in 2018. They push, they cry, they yell, they say they crave, they pick, they peck, they point, they shake, they stop, they go. We fly, we fall, we lift, we heave, we cry, we grieve. They lift, we rise, we shine.
So now we're going to sort of turn things around on you and have the music respond to the words. So Akwi is going to, well, you guys are going to compose a verse for us. Akwi will tell you all about it.
Okay, so as Carey was just mentioning, one of the things that we wanted to provide you is an opportunity to collaborate with us. And this is something that I'm really comfortable with as a writer, as a performer. I often, at the end of my shows that I produce, I've been listening to other writers as they perform their words throughout the show, and then at the end, I create a piece that incorporates lines from their work. So this is similar to that. The difference between my work as an artist and, of course, Red Cedar Chamber is that they're not typically improvising. And so what we will do, and I think this Zoom group is really large, isn't it? Isn't it
Yes,
like
it
40
is.
or something like
Yeah,
that?
and plus as many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so what I'm asking you to do is you're going to write a 5 to 7 word phrase. All right, a 5 to 7 word phrase. And in the room here, we have Post-it notes. You've got your pens or pencils. In the Zoom, go ahead and use your chat feature.
To everyone.
Say that again?
Chat to everyone so that she can see it, because she's not the administrator.
Yep, so chat to everyone, because I will copy and paste in Zoom into a note in my phone, and we're going to co-create a piece of poetry together. So what I need you to do is write a 5 to 7 word phrase. Doesn't have to be a complete sentence, just a 5 to 7 word phrase. You're going to do it in 45 seconds. We'll collect the Post-it notes. Then I'm going to, like I said, put them all together, draft a poem, and then we'll have a music component that goes with it. So 5 to 7 word phrase. You have 45 seconds. Ready, go. Okay, the humor is coming out. Okay, time is up. So submit your phrases in the Zoom chat. I'm pasting them into a new note. And Mrs. Driscoll will come around and collect the Post-it notes. We only have 2 Zoom submissions.
Three. There are 3.
3.
Yeah. There's only 13 out there.
Oh, okay.
So for whatever
Okay.
reason, just yeah.
Very different tone to these.
Yeah, these are choir students.
These are choir students, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as Akwi is furiously processing 250 words, I want to give you a little more context. That time period that elocution was an art form. 1870 to 1920 lines up pretty well to a very important time frame in the entertainment industry, and that is the advent of Thomas Edison inventing the phonograph in 1877, and then being one of the people who invented moving pictures or movies in about 1894 or 5. The early period of silent film, of early film, went from 1895 to about 1920 or so. We call it silent film. They were never silent. There was always music or sometimes narration accompanying these early films. And in fact, the predominant form of employment for musicians during those years was as an accompanist for early films.
And we should clarify, people are in the theater, they're watching the films, and there are musicians live that are playing to it as they're also watching the film.
So the presenters of these films would send out or send ahead their set list, and the music director, sometimes a theater would have just one pianist or an organist or a guitar player, but more often they had ensembles, chamber ensembles of 10 people, or even full orchestras or bands. And they had a big library of music, and the music director would look at the set list, and the set list would come with directions like sadness. And so, for instance, we've seen piano books that are indexed based on emotion. So, like, if you need 40 seconds of morose, then you turn to page 62 and play whatever Chopin ballade is on that page, or whatever, or joyful, and there are tremendous variety of emotion and context presented in these books. So the reason why I bring it up is because as the music director would have to take an ensemble's worth of written music, they'd have their library, and then he would plan it out in advance so that then they could accompany appropriately the music. Red Cedar has done several projects related to the Brinton collection of early entertainment materials, which is one of the most important collections of early films and entertainment industry records from Washington, Iowa. This is one of the most important collections in the world. It begins with 1894 and ends in 1913. So these are some of the earliest films in the world. And we've presented a lot of things with them. So what is interesting is that in current day, in Akwi's everyday life, her collaborations with musicians are mostly improvisatory. Now, I mean, this is post-jazz. This is the post-jazz era. In fact, the first Warner Brothers film that used sound was called The Jazz Singer. It was 1927, and Al Jolson was the singer, and they had several numbers with him singing. But we are not improvisers. As classical musicians, now we encourage you all to be improvisers. But as our profession was as orchestral musicians, and so even though when I was a little older than you, I was out playing jazz in bars, a few decades of showing up and reading a new 90-minute program every week and never improvising and never memorizing anything because you got to read the Mozart symphony or the Beethoven symphony. Those skills have atrophied to the point where when we talked about doing this project, Miera and I were absolutely terrified. No, it's still pretty terrifying. But basically what we're going to do is Akwi's going to read your poem, and then we're going to look in a book of most of our repertoire, which is a lot of music in here, and we're going to try and figure out what we have that fits the character of the poem, maybe the form, the content, and play something appropriate. We might edit it for length, we might change the tempo that we would normally play it, or the dynamic, or the color, But what we're going to try and do is find something appropriate for the verse, as opposed to a verse being inspired by the music.
And you know what Akwi's doing is in the moment she's creating something from your phrases that you turned in. As Carey said, we're not going to improvise, but as classical musicians, and you guys are all singers and you're probably mostly singing classical music or music in the classical music tradition, our main way of expressing ourselves is through interpretation. So that might mean, as Carey already mentioned, things like tempo, things like dynamic, tone color, articulations. Are you going to sing or play as smoothly as possible? Are you going to have sharp staccato effects? And the character of a piece, whether it's, you know, upbeat or more relaxed or sentimental. These are all things that we try to convey through the music that we've learned just by seeing the dots on the page. So that's what when Akwi has made her grand creation here.
Yeah, I think I'm ready.
Ready?
Yeah, as ready as I'm gonna be.
Yeah.
I mean, this one's tricky. You guys are funny. Okay, cats and stuff. I love it. Okay. Woo. So one of the things so I've taken as many words as I could of your submissions, both through Zoom and in the room, and then just rearranged them, snipped a couple out, added a couple of my own in. But often what I also incorporate is consideration around how I deliver the lines, what the operative words are. And so as you listen to the words and the phrases, you may recognize your phrases or you may not because of how I've delivered them or how I've embedded them differently in the context of the other words that have been submitted. Here we go. The earth goes around the sun on the Moonlight Express. Trust is like waves coming back to the shore. We all need a friend like we need blueberry shortcake and huckleberry pie, or a dog sitting on a couch, or summer breeze. Like love in the air. Crazy, I know, it's just that this stressed me out so much. Knowing funny things, like awesome cats eat stinky cheese. Or floating up on cool, crisp winds just feels right. And this boy, meet girl, meet boy, meet girl. All eyes in crowded rooms are the same shade of blue. If you're not first, you're last. There isn't always joy in the joyous. Like, you know, the Grim Reaper staring right at me to win the battle of fights, illusions. Some may see, others may not. Stand alone in the dark peace. Chill, relax like a river. Life is simply a series of stumbles and falls, failure for knowledge's sake, pitfalls of the golden rain falling. The world isn't so scary after all. There you go.
That was phenomenal.
So, as they put their heads together, considering, you know, what they just heard, let's talk a little bit about this. What is your general response to hearing that poem? And also on Zoom, you can hit up the comments, the chat. What is your general response to hearing that poem? Anything? Did you hear your phrase? How did your phrase change? Anything? Hit me up. What's up? Yeah. Awesome. So those of you in the Zoom room, we have somebody in the classroom saying that it flowed a lot more than they thought it would. Thought it would be jumpy, and it ended up flowing really smoothly. Yes. Awesome. So character and point of view seem to stay the same throughout.
Generally, even from like the complete randomness of
Yeah, I love it. So again, Zoom room, I'm having to repeat what's said in the room so that they can hear through this microphone. Being able to somehow create an arc, creating a story arc, right? I mean, all of these really disparate pieces of words that you sent me, I'm feverishly trying to create that arc. So I'm glad that you pointed that out, because there, you know, where do I start so that it builds up sort of smoothly, creates some tension, something that happens in the middle, and then we ease our way out of it again, right? I heard some laughter. I can't remember if it was the cat. There was like a recognition that I'd somehow made something work. I heard that in the room. I can't remember which line it was, but
I think it was the stinky.
the stinky cheese. Okay. Okay. Any others? Okay, I think that Miera and Carey are ready.
All right, so we enjoyed that poem, and this is what we've decided to play.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you like that, Akwi?
That was an awesome choice, don't you think? What do you think? That was groovy, man.
So what we were thinking is the poem, and you know, this has actually been more interesting for us because this is the third period we've done this. And of course, the poem is different every time, and the music we select is different. So we're getting a lot of contrast, but this poem had sort of a tongue-in-cheek quality, and it had positive energy, but wasn't, you know, highly energetic. And so we thought, doing this jazzy swing piece, it was upbeat, it was a little bit whimsical, but also jazz, you know, you have more of a backbeat feeling, so it had a little bit of this laid-back character as well. So that's why we selected it.
That was awesome. Just so you know, if you see me on my phone, I'm going to just copy the poem and paste it into the chat so that it's there for people. But I also improvised as I was reading it. As I was reading it aloud, I'm recognizing, okay, this line here could be repeated here, and you know, I was recognizing some spaces that needed just slight adjustments as I read it out loud. So whatever appears in the chat won't be quite exactly what you heard, but very, very, very close. Yeah.
So we have one more work for you today, and it's a collaborative commission between Akwi and our composer in residence at the time, Stephen Cohn, who is an Emmy Award-winning composer based in LA. longtime friend of Red Cedar Chamber Music. And actually, Justin, if you want to pin him, he's actually on this call. And
You guys, it's kind of like if Eric Whitaker zoomed into your choir for us. That Stephen is here today.
Hi, Stephen.
Stephen, do you see us?
Hello, hello, can you hear
We're
me?
gonna unmute you. Unmute yourself.
I just did. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear.
Can you hear me?
We're working on it, Stephen.
Hold on just a second. I thought it would be nice to include Stephen in the introduction to this.
Okay, he said he's muted.
No, that's us.
Oh.
Say something, Stephen.
Hello, can you hear me?
Go ahead and speak, Stephen.
Wait a second.
Hold on, say something again, Stephen.
Can you hear me? Yes? You can hear me? Okay, good.
How did you like Akwi's poem?
I'm sorry, were you talking to me?
So we're wondering, Stephen, how you liked Akwi's and the students' poetry.
I thought it was awesome the way Akwi was able to string all that together. And I think it's fascinating how music affects the emotional reaction that people have to words and to visuals. In this case, they weren't done simultaneously, but I thought the poem had an improvisational and sort of playful feeling. So I thought the choice of music was really excellent and would have worked very well if they were done together.
So let me just briefly tell you about the beginning of this project. We, shortly after we took over as directors of Red Cedar Chamber Music in 2016, we received a commission which was intended to celebrate a 40th wedding anniversary. It was a surprise gift from the husband to his wife, and he knew to ask for something a couple years in advance because it takes a long time to develop new works like this. And it took a while. We had wanted to collaborate with Akwi, and Stephen was our composer in residence at the time, or maybe he was incoming, I can't remember. We had worked with him before. And it took a while, but one night I just had this brilliant, like 5 months after, I finally came up with the idea that the piece written for these people's 40th wedding anniversary could be a spoken word collaboration, and that Stephen and Akwi could co-write this work. So they went through this process, and I'll let them tell you about it, but it basically was an extensive process, and you're about to hear the 18-minute piece that came out of it.
I'll go first. I'll go first, and then Stephen can jump in. So the first part of the collaboration was for me to talk with Tom, and remember, this was supposed to be a surprise for his wife for their 40th anniversary. So I couldn't get her feedback and perspective on their 40+ year relationship. I was truly restricted to what Tom could remember. It was a very one-sided experience, having only one of the two people to talk with about the 40+ year relationship. So talking with Tom, and then from that conversation with Tom, really trying to figure out what themes out of all of the information he provided me were going to rise to the surface. And then sending my first draft of the written word to Stephen. And from there, it was a lot of collaboration with being informed by one another's responses to the writing and the music. And I'll let Stephen jump in at this point.
Yeah, well, it was an adventure because there really isn't much in the way of a tradition of this kind of presentation with classical chamber music and spoken words. So we were sort of inventing the form as we were working on it. Um, I had a strong feeling from the beginning that there was a story and that I needed to have some information of some feeling of the story before I could do anything. So my work actually started when I got Akwi's rough draft, and I got a sense of what this was about. And out of that came two main themes, which you will hear, and maybe we can talk about them more later. And then Akwi and I sort of kicked ideas back and forth as she refined the text. And she also included as the text became more and more refined, she included suggestions of where she thought music should go. And I had some input from Red Cedar about the length of the piece and so forth. So the final evolution of the piece was when Akwi actually sent me a recording of her performing the text. And I used that to make a mock-up of the piece using the pieces of composed music and inserting them into the recording and allowing for everyone to comment on the structure and the form and the pace and all that. So I think it was the synergy between the three different parties that actually worked so well and energized the whole production. One of the challenges for me particularly was finding a version of a score that would make sense so that the performers could see things in the right sequence and see how the music fit against the words. So, yeah.
One of the challenge for me in terms of writing the text, there were two challenges. One was trying to create a balance between incorporating enough specific details that were true to Tom and Patrice's personal story, and at the same time making it universal enough that a wide range of audience members could find or see themselves in the story of relationships and even parenthood, even if you're not necessarily a parent yet. So really a challenge to try to make it unique and individualistic and also universal. And then the second challenge, what was the second challenge? Oh, the unicorns and rainbows. Yes, this was a gift. This was 40th anniversary, celebratory stuff. All unicorns and rainbows, right? And I'm a writer, and we know that every good story needs conflict. And so this was a troublesome spot for me. How do I create some tension or conflict in this piece without it being tension or conflict between these two very beautiful, loving people? And so that tension emerges in the text, in the relationship between parents and their children. In the past, we always played a little bit of that and people were like, oh yeah, I know what that sounds like. But yeah.
Should we maybe move on to the basic themes? Perhaps Stephen wants to introduce what we call the love theme, the opening statement.
Stephen, would you like?
Yes. Would I like to? What was the question?
Introduce the themes on the music side.
Oh, okay. So what evolved out of my looking at Akwi's text, and as embraced in the title of the piece, was that the real underlying theme of this was love. It was love that kept people together for 40 years through all that life presents to us. So the love theme is really the main theme, and you will hear it in a number of different forms throughout the piece. This a basic composer's technique is what we call variety within unity. So the idea is you have, a small number of ideas, and that helps to unify the structure of the whole piece. But by varying them, you keep it from getting repetitive and boring. And also, as you vary, it responds to what is happening in the film or the text in this case. So the one idea of love is modified by the experiences that a family is having in their relationship. Do you want me to talk about the second theme, or do you want to go on?
Let's do the love theme, and we'll come back to it.
Okay.
Okay.
So the piece. To mention that the piece is called Love and Life, and it's about 18 minutes long. But the very opening begins with this love theme that Stephen spoke of, and you're going to hear the cello play it alone. And this is what it sounds like with some harmonies added.
So then Stephen used it, he changed keys many times, but he also changed tempos and styles and rhythms of this. So he also used it to intersperse the words with this theme. So
let me just remind everyone, do, re, mi. It always starts with that, do, re, mi, da, 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 do, re, mi. So you'll hear it now in a very different style.
Yeah, that's okay. So let us,
Let us keep time. Let us, like dancers, keep time and feel the weight of it on our toes.
Could you recognize the theme there, even though the rhythm changed?
let's do 14.
Okay, here we're going to change it even again. Remember the do, re, mi. Here it is, modified again.
Great. And then let's just play just a little bit of 22. This might be, is that okay? Great. Yeah. So now I think should we do the conflict and then the other thing? Let's go ahead and do the conflict part.
So, this is a very beautiful theme. Once again, we're talking about this lovely idea, love and life. But Stephen manages a way when Akwi introduces the conflict of raising children into her words, horrible teenagers. Stephen brings some music with a sense of conflict, and the theme is still there. I'll get us in the key so your ears can hear it. But this is how he addresses it.
And this is a passage that builds up and builds from the text, and it's working together, and this is what happens after Akwi finishes his text.
teenagers, just an FYI.
Okay, so now could you ask Stephen to introduce the other main theme?
Okay, Stephen, go ahead and introduce the other musical theme.
Yeah, the other main theme became known as the breathing theme because it's introduced in a section where Akwi is talking about the times at which one has to control breathing, birthing a baby, kissing, and so forth. And it had the feeling of expectancy and tension, as in, expecting the birth of a baby and all the things that are, all the suspense that is associated with that. And there was also something about the idea of controlling breath and being in suspense, actually, that I think formed the ideas in my mind, the tremolo in the cello and the melody that has little pauses in it. And this one is not really transformed many times because it deals with a specific aspect of the story. It does recur once later in the toward the end of the piece. There's one section where, after you've heard this theme, I think 3 times, then there's an extended section where there's a pizzicato theme, which is really an extension of the breathing theme. And then there is a augmentation of the pizzicato theme that's drawn out into a long section. This is all just kind of an explication of this part of the story.
And then Stephen mentioned the pizzicato treatment. This is what that sounds like.
I'm trying to think. We've got plenty of time.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So.
We could do the canon too.
Yeah, and there's another place where Stephen turns this into a canon, which is, I think, especially since we're just 2 instruments. Wait, give me a measurement.
256.
Since we're just 2 instruments, I think, any relationship is between 2 people, or most relationships. This is a very poignant moment.
You know what a canon is, right? So here we each have an independent melody, but you can hear them displaced rhythmically. Could you hear the 2 lines? Yeah.
So,
We should play and then there'll be time for questions afterwards.
So I think.
And I'll just add, because I haven't mentioned it yet, as far as themes in the text for this, you're going to hear motifs around breathing, which you've already heard discussed. And then dance, just relationships and partnerships in the context of dance as a metaphor. and relationships, of course, between parents and their children.
You want to check with Stephen if he wants to add anything more before we play?
You bet. So Stephen, if you'd like to add anything more before we play, now would be the chance to do that.
Okay, yeah, I was just thinking that I think it's kind of interesting the way the love theme evolved from my end. Actually, the first version of the love theme was the very fast one, and it had a lot of double stops in it, and was kind of interesting. But two things happened. I was playing it for my wife and saying, I like this theme, but we really need something more poignant for the love theme. And she said, what would happen if you slow it down? So it turned out that the love theme was actually the slowed down version of the very fast original version of that theme. And in the slow version, the double stops worked. So it's just funny how musical ideas evolve sometimes. Also, relating to the dance, you'll see in the latter part of the piece, after Akwi says, "May I have this dance?" there is a version of the love theme, which is in 3/4 time, waltz time, whereas otherwise it has been in 4/4 and other time signatures, just amplifying the idea of dance.
So now we'll perform for you Love and Light by Stephen Cohn and Akwi Nji.
Let us keep time. Let us, like dancers, keep time and feel the weight of it in our toes. When we hold one another close as dancers, a head gently rests against a chest and hears the heart, the metronome of memory. Here is where time keeps, time keeps, time keeps, time keeps, and releases the golden notes into the chambers within us. Let us keep time, not like sand confined to glass, but like water in a cupped palm, understanding that this moment, and this one too, are moments already gone, yet there is much we drank, and it flows now within us as memories to our fingertips, our toes, our lips. First kiss. Light as hummingbirds' flight is the flush of first love. Let us kiss quietly, softly, secretly. Quick retreat and flushed cheek, the first kiss, a flickering of light, a holding of breath, and knowing there is a shared life to come. Like theirs, it was a young love, maybe in the library or the ice cream shop or the campus bookstore. There was a hurry, a waiting, a hoping to be married by senior year. They were at first wanderers together, gathering furniture, birthing homes, and city after city. Through all of the cities, there was the starting over, the starting over with only each other, again and again and again. Here is home to the memory of our first breath. To breathe, to take in air, to take in the aroma of something, to live. Fathers in the birthing room hold their breath until the first breath of their newborn is heard. We breathe. There are times when breathing must be controlled. Singing, kissing, birthing a baby. The baby that would become a child with bedtime stories shared. A mother remembers holding the child the way a dancer holds a partner close. A head gently rests against a chest and hears the heart, the metronome of memory. A mother remembers the turning pages, the child quieting, softening into sleep. The breathing to fill a room. In the almost quiet of a child's room when she has softened into sleep, you hope, you fear, you wish. You wish for her small hands to know many joys ahead in the hands she'll hold. You fear there will be loves who will break her heart open under a quiet moon, that there will be friendships lost, that one day she will discover the magic of wishing on stars is not real. You hope to save her from that sorrow. Teach her there is magic in life. In the almost quiet of the room, the tick-tick of the second hand whispers, good night, good night, good night, good night, pulling closer to us the years ahead, so that long after we have put the last book of the last bedtime of their childhoods down, a mother remembers. There is love in those pages. Each year, a new chapter. Each year, a letting go, a letting grow. Does love come too in the afternoon of life, when lines have traced a smile and the slivers of silver have begun to show? Within all the world, the moving parts, the physics, the energy and motion of writing and rewriting and revising our lives, there is this, the recognizing that with whom you share a kiss in Cleveland, a dinner in Munich, a ride through Vermont is the one worth sharing a life's years with, the broken and beautiful years, the years of calm and the years of chaos, a marathon of memories shared that left you breathless and happy to the point of tears. 1 year, 2, 3, turn into 38, 39, 40. 1 year, 2, 3, turn into 38, 39, 40. Each year stretches across the galaxy of time, each memory a star, each exhale tracing a constellation from who we were to who we have become. Mothers and fathers to sons and daughters, all of us dancers, desperately, fiercely, bravely keeping time. To be a parent is to be both a dancer and a gardener, to become something new and to cling fast to who you were. To be a gardener is to know what you can control and what you must leave to the stars, the universe, Mother Nature. Children, they grow wild as wisteria, cascading, stretching, reaching upward and eventually away. To be a parent is to be a gardener with another, learning as you go, learning as you grow, learning that as they grow, you at once grow closer to and drift further away from one another. Parenthood is an inhale, an exhale, into and away from one another. It is a fight to find the light and a lesson in learning that the storms will pass. It is exhilarating and exhausting and exhilarating. And before you know it, 25 years have gone so fast, so quickly gone. The children grown and gone. All is gone except the two of you and this home you built. And you turn to one another and say, let us catch our breath. Let us find one another again. It is just the two of us again. How much of ourselves remain? Do I know you? We danced together. I remember. And you begin to remember again Ann Arbor, Munich, Vermont, the galaxy of stars you made together and the nights you've shared under them. And one reaches out a hand, the fingertips in which many memories are held, and asks, may I have this dance? May our garden be with sun. May the chambers within our hearts be always filled with light, a warmth, a welcoming the other in. May our home be always a soft place to land, each room like honeycomb calling to all its members. Honey, come home. Honey, come home. Honey, come home. And may there always be memory. When we stop using one another's names, let us still remember we are related. There are the grandfathers whose trembling hands were once those of boys, who scrambled for the ball on squeaky wooden courts, and grandmothers whose knees rested in the dirt of strawberry patches as they tended to the berries tenderly. In the early morning, as the sun rises over the Iowa cornfields, let us turn the radio on still and dance in the kitchen, holding one another up because we know no other way. Let us stand with each other so that we hear our hearts rejoice in this moment. And this one. And this one. There is love in those notes. Let us keep time until the cupped palm reaches out in remembrance of all we sipped from life and which flows within us now. The turning pages, the quieting, the breathing to fill a room. Let us be so still now in this place together that we recognize one another and ourselves again as still and quiet dancers, keeping time.
For any of us, or
We've got time for
Stephen?
questions in the room, in the Zoom, and further conversation with Stephen, Stephen, if you're wondering what's happening in the room, as we're going back and forth between you speaking and any of us in the room speaking, our incredible communications and tech guy is jumping back and forth between monitors and computers and equipment, ensuring that everything works as it should.
And it appears to be doing just that.
So questions, and I'll pick up my phone and check the chat feature as well. I guess this hour we see it up there, but I can't see that far.
Stephen, how is it? How long has it been since you've heard this live?
Well, since I heard it live was when I was in Iowa City. That's the last time. Ah,
October 2018.
yeah, no, I think it's amazing. My impression is that it has aged like good wine.
What about the performers? Like bad wine?
No, it's interesting to see how it just seems to have become more organic during the time that you've been away from it and come back to it. It's just a very graceful, lovely performance.
We were actually able to come back to it the next spring. We performed it for a couple fundraising events, and that was a great experience because, you know, when you play a piece a lot, we do a lot of performances, and this was obviously the culmination of a 2-year project. It's really valuable to put it away. Like if you guys sing something in the fall and then don't touch it again until February, and then bring it out after spring break for for the spring competition season. It's refreshed, and you have something, there's a new energy and a new maturity and fullness to it, and I think that's what Stephen's referring to.
And at the
Yes.
same time, along with all of that, we always love returning to repertoire that we've already rehearsed and performed, for the very reason that Carey said, you gain insights every time, and you always feel like you can do it better justice. So thank you, Stephen.
Won't plays here.
So, any questions at all?
Do we have any people who dabble in composition in here, or? Wonderful. Any question for our composer? You know, he did not, around what age did you start composing, Stephen?
Oh, let me think about that. I think about 23. After a college education in music, which was at the time sort of aimed at being a guitarist and a performer. And then I found myself in a situation as a guitarist where people were writing songs around me, and I just suddenly found myself writing a song one day. That was the beginning.
Yep, so what time is it now?
It's like 9 minutes or something. It's fine. Yeah.
When does it end?
1:25.
Oh,
Yeah.
we have tons of time. No one has any questions?
Wow.
No one on chat?
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, we've got one. Let's, okay,
Yeah.
go ahead. Either of you, yeah. The question is, what got you guys into music in general? I'll be honest, I was about 5 years old, and my mom decided I ought to take piano lessons, so she just told me I'd be taking piano lessons. And she took me to my piano lessons, and I excelled at it. And then a couple years later, I started violin. And I have to say, I dabble in piano now, but I'm professionally a violinist. I love violin because it's portable, and you can make music or collaborate more easily with others than with a piano. And as you know in choir, it's really easy for a bunch of bodies to get together and sing together. Very similar with the stringed instruments, which piano doesn't really give you.
So my father was actually a music historian and also a pianist and organist. I grew up like turning his pages, sitting on the bench and accidentally falling off onto the pedals, the big bass notes. That was fun. But he was my piano teacher. I must have started when I was 3 or 4, and it did not go well. And then when I was in 7th grade, they had some kind of a musical assessment test, to see whether you should be in general music or band or whatever. And I don't know, I got with the extra credit, I got 127%. So they said I could be in orchestra, and they needed a cellist. So I didn't start playing until I was the end of my 7th grade year, actually, as a cellist. But the reason why I play the cello and the reason why I'm glad I play the cello is because it encompasses the entire human vocal range. I can sing bass. I mean, how many of you guys got a low C? You know, yeah, baby. Yeah, right. We got one. And you know, and obviously the alto and tenor and soprano, and you know, the lowest note on Miera's violin is, you know, the low G for you ladies. So you know, that's a very limited instrument. And then it gets up there, and you know, when we all get up there, it's very squeaky anyway. So Akwi, what got you into writing?
Any, anything. I don't know much about music, so, but writing, I knew I wanted to be a writer in middle school and high school, and it really it's just been a matter of discovering along the way what type of writing that I want to do. I realized pretty early on in late high school, early college, that I didn't want to write for the page. That's when you say to people, I'm a writer, they think, oh, you're a published writer, you know, you must be a novelist or a published poet. And I prefer to write words that are meant to be auditorily experienced. But when I was in college, that wasn't something that was, people didn't know what to do with me. My professors didn't know what to do with me in college as a writer. And so it has really been a journey throughout my entire adulthood, working in a number of ways to use writing, to use words creatively, to build emotion and to build connection.
You have another question? Yeah.
I figure it would be valuable to ask, especially considering the company that I'm in, if you had any advice for someone looking to pursue music after high school and after post-secondary education, particularly looking at composing music.
Well, yeah, so he's wondering if we have any advice about pursuing music after high school and college, and particularly as a composer. So Stephen, let me give a short response, and then we'll move to you as a composer. The advice that I give students is, you know, one, don't go into music unless you just can't help it. One. But two, even when I'm teaching string players who are super advanced and have a head start and you know, may actually have a chance at being able to make it as a performer, I really advise people to get their education degree and their certificate, and to not go into music unless they are willing to teach. You have to be entrepreneurial. The number of people who have a full-time job is very small. If you are entrepreneurial, that is the source of our collaboration here. That is the source of, I mean, we have that in our, Red Cedar has that in our mission statement, is collaboration. And you just have to, be aware of your surroundings and make the most of the resources that are available to you. But really, you know, from my perspective, you have to want to share it. You have to want to be a teacher, and that's the most important thing. But specifically as a composer, I think it's quite difficult. So,
Yeah, I would first of all echo what Carey said. The people that I know that have stayed with a musical career are people mostly who just never considered that they had a choice. It's just who they are and what they do. Most of the people who felt like they had a choice ended up doing something else. Specifically, as far as composition is concerned, composers are people who have this crazy idea of well, first of all, of having music in their head. They hear music in their head and they get in the habit of writing it down. So I would say, if you are passionate about composing, get in the habit of writing your ideas down. Pursue any kind of styles or genres of music that interest you. And then I would, you know, pursue a really thorough education, and allow your passion to lead the way in terms of what kind of music you write and who you write it for. But I would emphasize that from starting from right now, get in the habit of writing your ideas down. Get a notebook to keep your ideas. Get a notation program and learn how to use it. And go for it. One other thing: when you hear a piece of music that fascinates you, get a hold of it. See if you can find a score, and study the piece, whether or not you have a score, and try to get down to the essence of what it is that really fascinates you, and incorporate that into your style, not the actual notes that somebody wrote, but the techniques that were used to get that idea out.